Hi everybody and welcome to today's Art of Procurement podcast. I'm Philip Eidson, the founder and managing director of Art of Procurement. And as we all know, it's a really exciting time to be in procurement, especially with the pace of technological change. And so today's podcast is part of a special sponsored series that's taking part over the last 2 weeks of January 2020, where we aim to shine a light on the emerging and growth companies who are changing the way that leading procurement teams are driving outcomes that truly align with corporate objectives. And so we're going to ask an entrepreneur from 8 different companies questions about what gap in the market their solution addresses, how they differentiate their technology, and what the tools look like in action. It's a great way for you to get to know those who are truly leading the way when it comes to the digitization of procurement. And so in today's podcast, I talked to Paul Gurr of Provalido, and I first asked Paul to share Provalido's elevator pitch.
Well, we provide a web application that helps organizations manage and report on their procurement initiatives, and that's from idea right through to implementation. Our solution is easy to use, it's flexible so that it fits whatever processes different organizations have in their structure, and fits with how they want to run their projects.
So when you talk about essentially managing their projects, you're talking managing sourcing projects essentially through the entire sourcing process as a collaboration and a reporting tool?
Yes, I mean, it's sourcing projects, but it can be any project really that procurement works on and spends time on. So typically that would mainly be projects that are delivering some sort of benefit. So that might be savings, but it could be revenue growth, or it could be stock reduction or something like that. But equally, it can be projects that are not delivering any savings benefits at all and have no sort of quantifiable benefit in that sense, but they're delivering some sort of other value. So it could be an environmental benefit or something like that. So it's possible to track both those sorts of projects in the tool. Obviously, the ones that deliver value, you can then report on in different ways on the benefits they're delivering. The ones that don't deliver a quantifiable benefit, you can report on the kind of resource and time spent on those and plan ahead as well.
Yeah, you still use it for resource, for managing essentially all the projects and knowing what resources you need, even if there's not value at the end of the day.
Exactly, yeah.
So why did you start Provalido? What was kind of the either the inspiration or the challenge that you were facing as a procurement pro where you felt there was a gap?
Yeah, well, exactly. So, I mean, my background has been in procurement. So I've been in procurement my entire career, which is over 25 years now. And particularly, I think, as a procurement consultant for a lot of that, I spent a lot of time developing spreadsheets to track the savings that we were delivering for customers as part of procurement transformation type projects. But also working in industry, I spent a lot of time filling in spreadsheets, creating spreadsheets, and reporting savings. And I think the key driver was one of the last roles I had before starting Provalido was at a procurement outsource provider. And I was working at a large FMCG company in Chicago who'd outsourced all their indirect spend to the company I was working for. And we were reporting our savings in an Access database, so a bit more advanced than using spreadsheets, but it was a nightmare, to be honest. So we had to employ one person full time, basically, to stop the thing breaking and to hold it together. And the team I was managing was spending so much of their time updating that database and making changes to it, and pulling information out wasn't that easy either. You could pull it out, but actually getting it into a format that was helpful was difficult. So having lived through that for the best part of 2 years, I came to the feeling that surely there must be a nicer way of doing this. And having a look around, it didn't seem that there was really much there in terms of technology addressing this particular issue. So I decided to set up Provalido and go about developing a web app that would just make it easier for people to report their savings and manage their projects.
Right, and it just brings transparency to the process as well. So everything isn't stuck in an Excel spreadsheet or in somebody's email. And for a leader, that was something that I was always struggling with, is really getting a good snapshot of where everything is at any one point in time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's looking ahead, looking at the current and looking back as well. So, what savings have we achieved? How did that compare to what we initially forecasted? What are we working on currently? Where are the pain points, the bottlenecks that we might have? And then what are we forecasting in the future? So it gives that transparency. And I think the fact you've got a robust workflow in the tool as well, with milestones and approvals at certain points, means it brings a credibility as well to what's being reported. So there's no doubt about the numbers. The numbers have been approved by the right people. They've been checked. And therefore you have that credibility and that kind of robustness to what you're reporting.
Yeah, single source of truth, essentially.
Yes,
on
exactly.
all of your numbers.
Yeah.
Now, a number of people who are listening to today's show, they may already have a P2P or a source to contract kind of suite solution, or even some best of breed sourcing tools. Like, how do you, for the want of the better word, kind of play in that environment? Is it something where a tool like Provalido is really just most effective when you don't have any technology? Or do you find that folks are using it who also have access to some of the other sourcing tools that may be on the market?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that pretty much all our customers are using other procurement technology, and we would certainly encourage them to do that. So most of our customers would also have an e-sourcing tool of some sort. They'd also probably have a P2P tool, ERP if they're in that kind of industry. And we'd also encourage them to have a spend visibility tool as well. And you've got other areas like contract management, etc. So, I mean, our tool really complements these other areas of technology, and we would certainly encourage people to look at the kind of going with best of breed in each individual niche in terms of the most cost-effective way of covering all your bases with technology, but also ensuring that you do have the best possible technology in each of those areas. Then going for niche products such as ours, along with other providers in other areas, I think works really well. I mean, you obviously some of the suite providers will provide a module that does some sort of savings reporting, but depending on the suite, that can be quite basic in what it does, and that it's just reporting out from another part of the tool. Some are a little bit more fleshed out, but I think the fact that we only do this, we don't have any other technology, we don't have any plans to do any other technology, so we're fully focused on this savings management part of the technology spectrum. It enables us to be, really rigorous and as good as we can be in that area, and we're constantly improving the tool with suggestions from customers and adding new features, making it easier to use. So it's a constantly evolving piece of technology.
So when you're actually working with clients to implement Provalido, like, what does that look like? Is it a multi-month process, or is it something that you can essentially turn on pretty quickly and get folks up to speed with?
Yeah, well, people are quite often surprised when we have a demo or a sales meeting and they ask us about the implementation time scales, because really implementation is just a matter of days rather than weeks or months. And the time taken is really dependent on the customer and how clean their data is and how quickly they want to move. So the typical process we go through is to have an initial kickoff meeting with the customer where we get a good understanding of how do they report savings currently, how would they like to report savings and their projects in the future, what kind of information would they be looking to get out of the tool. And from that, we can then get a good idea of the best way of configuring the system. So although it's a true cloud-based system in that every customer has the same system, it is highly configurable as well. So once we have that information from the customer, we can configure the system. We would also then typically get their existing savings and project information, which is usually in a spreadsheet, and we'd migrate that and import that into the system. So we can do all of that on our side in 2 or 3 days, and the system is then ready to use. And then typically it's a matter of holding one or more web-based training sessions. So we just take the users through how do you create a project, how do you make an approval, how do you run reports, and that's typically 45 minutes to an hour to go through that. And then people are good to go. They get access and away they go. So we have instances where people approach us for the first time and literally within a couple of weeks, they're up and running fully in the system.
Pretty streamlined process then. So, So for anyone who's listening, like I've had the benefit of using tools like this on the consulting side. Now, Paul mentioned that was where some of his background came from, and I see it more. I often see tools like this in consulting that are used for managing procurement performance. Essentially, if you don't have access to a tool like this, I really highly recommend it because it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference quickly. And it's just a great way of getting all your information in one place so that you can then start to manage around it. So, Paul, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and sharing a little bit more about Provalido. The final question I have is if you could just share a little bit more, if folks listen to today's conversation, they're interested in learning a little bit more, where is the best place for them to go and find you?
So the best place would be to go to our website, so www.provalido.com. On the website, there's our phone numbers. You've got a US and a UK phone number. We've got forms you can fill in. And, we're obviously always very happy to talk to anyone, whether it's a genuine inquiry or just asking questions about what we do and what the potential benefits would be. We're always happy to have a chat with anyone who's interested in what we do. Okay,
perfect. Well, what I'll do is I'll include a link to your website on the show notes for today's episode. Listeners can find those just by going to artofprocurement.com/podcast, and there'll either be a link to the startup series you'll see on there, or just search for startup series or Provalido. Paul, one last time, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Phil. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into this special startup series on the art of procurement. To listen to the entire series and for the show notes pages that accompany each episode, please go to artofprocurement.com/startup series.